If you like somebody, you will exaggerate them in your mind. If you dislike somebody, for sure you will exaggerate them in your mind. Exaggeration means you are unable to see things as they are. If you're unable to see things as they are, you can never handle life the way it should be. So liking and disliking exaggerates either in positive ways or in negative ways, but it exaggerates or it distorts life. So what you like is not important.
Hey, namaste everyone, hope y'all doing well. So I just want to release this video today, and I might get some backlash from this. I hope not, because it's just an informative video. I've been seeing a lot going on in the world, and I've been claiming to be the urban community ambassador, and the reason I've been saying this is because there's a lot of information that I think isn't being shared with our people. And when I mean our people, it's not just black people. The urban community does not mean a race thing. The urban community means a wealth thing. Like there's people in charge of our economic system, and that's been running the world more than race. But when race gets brought up, it gets focus. But then look at the coronavirus, that has nothing to do with race, right? And that got brought up. So I'm putting out this video because I don't want to think about race, but I want to just think about, let's look at information that's out there and see why we are attacking certain people and celebrating certain people. So I'm gonna have a couple videos in here, most likely. If not, it's gonna be a different part series. So the first video is gonna have what they call KGB, and this guy who literally explains his job was to go to other countries and invade them. And I just want you to take a listen from his own ears, or from his own mouth, what he does as a professional, or what he did. And he just breaks it down how this could be happening in America. And then there's gonna be a thing about Biden and Trump. I don't know if it's going to be in this video or the next one, but I want you guys to take a look at it to see what is actually happening in our country and also in our world. Because just answer this one question, I'm going to go. Has America been the powerhouse for a while now? And if the answer is yes, if America has been the powerhouse for a while, then we have to realize that things that happen in America, it affects everything around the world. And I really want to put out this video, so just please check it out. Because I've just been hearing a lot of stuff going on, and some people been coming to me asking for my opinion and stuff, and I think I wanted to put it out and share it on here. So check it out, let me know what y'all think, and let's make it a conversation. No attacking here. I'm not on Trump's side, I'm not on Biden's side, I'm on life's side, I'm on humanity's side, and that's it. And if you guys have questions, let's make it a conversation, please. Let's not attack each other, because when has that solved anything? When has it solved anything? It has not. Violence begets violence. This is in the Bible, this is in religion, this is in spirituality. Violence begets violence. This is just true. So let's not act naive when we're conscious beings. All right, namaste, and have a blessed season.
He gave this lecture back in 1980s. It took me a while to find this golden nugget. And the reason I uploaded this video on my channel is because it is a great lecture that helps us in understanding the current political scenario both around the world as well as in our own country. And I believe it needs to be seen. After watching this, you will be able to relate what is happening today in many Western societies like America and Europe. And unfortunately, it is also happening in India. Since it's a long video, please watch it whenever you have time. And maybe you all get a bit more educated. The video starts now.
Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government, system, political, economical system of a country. And usually it's linked to espionage and such romantic things as blowing up bridges, sidetracking trains, cloak and dagger activity in Hollywood style. What I'm going to talk about now has absolutely nothing to do with the cliché of espionage or KGB activity of collecting information. So the greatest mistake or misconception, I think, is that whenever we are talking about KGB, for some strange reason, starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs, or Kremlinologists as they call themselves, they think that the most desirable thing for Andropov and the whole KGB is to steal blueprints of some supersonic jet, bring it back to Soviet Union and sell it to the Soviet military-industrial complex. It's only partly true. If we take the whole time, money, and manpower that the Soviet Union and KGB in particular spends outside of USSR border, we will discover, of course there are no official statistics unlike with CIA or FBI, that the espionage as such occupies only 10 to 15% of money, time, and manpower. 15% of the activity of KGB. The rest, 85%, is always subversion. And unlike a dictionary of English, Oxford Dictionary, subversion in Soviet terminology means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. So there's no romantics in there, absolutely. No blowing up bridges, no microfilms in Coca-Cola cans, nothing of that sort. No James Bond nonsense. It's most of this activity is overt, legitimate, and easily observable if you give yourself time and trouble to observe it. But according to the law and law enforcement systems of the Western civilization, it's not a crime. Exactly because of misconception, manipulation of terms. We think that subverter is a person who is going to blow up our beautiful bridges. No. Subverter is a student who comes for exchange, a diplomat, an actor, an artist, a journalist like myself was 10 years ago.
So right here he says something very important about what we actually believe espionage is. We think espionage is like that James Bond stuff when people come around, hey man, I want these plans, I want these records, I want all this. But that's false. If he's saying this and you believe this, I just want to say that there's a video in here. It's going to be called the cognitive bias video. And right here, right now, that what he's saying is this. This first one in the video actually is called the anchoring bias. We anchor what media tells us espionage is, and then we think it's supposed to be the James Bond stuff. But I'm telling y'all right now, he just said it's easy observable. It's not some secret stuff like that. If we all can open our eyes and just look at our world and not put what media tells us it's like what's supposed to be crazy and not, just look in yourself and just go, okay, well, what's humane or not humane? Taxes aren't humane. That's a different conversation. Anyways, cognitive biases. Don't think you know what something is based off of some past stuff. We always treat a new moment as a new moment. So anchoring bias, oh yeah, I heard that before, but let me hear how he's talking about it. Oh, espionage, yeah, of course I know what espionage is, but let me hear how he's trying to express it, because maybe he's trying to come from a different angle of espionage. So don't allow cognitive biases to not let you hear what is happening. All right, there's gonna be, and notice how he said the people who do this type of KGB stuff, you know, they appear just like regular people like you and me. All right, so a diplomat, a banker, a writer, a journalist, an actor, all right, a post office person. It doesn't matter, basically what I'm trying to say. Don't think that it's supposed to be something, all right?
Now, subversion is an activity which is a two-way traffic. You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. If you know history of Japan, for example, before 20th century, Japan was a closed society. The moment a foreign boat comes to the shores of Japan, the Imperial Japanese Army politely tells them to get lost. And if American salesman comes to the shore of Japan, let's say 60 or 70 years from now back, and says, oh, I have a very beautiful vacuum cleaner for you, with the good financing, he says, please leave us, we don't need your vacuum cleaner. If they don't leave, they shoot them to preserve their culture, ideology, traditions, values intact. You were not able to subvert Japan. You cannot subvert Soviet Union because the borders are closed. The media is censored by the government. The population is controlled by the KGB and internal police. With all the beautiful glossy pictures of Time magazine and Magazine America, which is published by the American embassy in Moscow, you cannot subvert Soviet citizens because the magazine never reaches Soviet citizens. It's collected from the newsstands and thrown to garbage can. Subversion can be only successful when the initiator, the actor, the agent of subversion has a responsive target. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion. There is no response similar to that one from United States to the Soviet Union. It stops halfway somewhere. It never reaches here. The theory of subversion goes all the way back 2,500 years ago. The first human being who formulated the tactics of subversion was a Chinese philosopher by the name of Sun Tzu. 2,500 years BC. He was an advisor for several imperial courts in ancient China. And he said, after long meditation, that to implement state policy in a warlike manner, it's the most counterproductive, barbaric, and inefficient to fight on a battlefield. You know that war is continuation of state policy, right? So if you want successfully to implement your state policy and you start fighting, this is the most idiotic way to do it. The highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in the country of your enemy, until such time that the perception of reality of your enemy is screwed up to such an extent that he does not perceive you as an enemy, and that your system, your civilization, and your ambitions look to your enemy as an alternative, if not desirable, then at least feasible. Better red than dead. That's the ultimate purpose, the final stage of subversion, after which you can simply take your enemy without a single shot being fired, if the subversion is successful. This is basically what subversion is. As you see, not a single mentioning of blowing up bridges. Of course, Sun Tzu didn't know about blowing up bridges. Maybe there were not that many bridges at that time. But the basics of subversion is being taught to every student of KGB school in USSR and to officers of military academies. I'm not sure if the same author is included in the list of reading for American officers, to say nothing about ordinary students of political science. I had difficulty to find the translation of Sun Tzu in a library of a university in Toronto and later on here in Los Angeles. But it's a book which is not available It is forced to every student in USSR. Every student who is taught to be dealing further in his future career with foreigners. What subversion is? Basically, it consists of 4 periods, time-wise. If we start from here and go this way, time, right? This is the beginning point. The first stage of subversion is the process which is called, basically, demoralization. It says for itself what it is. It takes from, say, 15 to 20 years to demoralize a society. Why 15 or 20 years? This is the time sufficient to educate one generation of students or children. One generation. One lifetime span of a person, a human being, which is dedicated to study, to shaping up the outlook, ideology, personality. No more, no less. Usually it takes from 15 to 20 years. What it includes? It includes influencing, or by various methods, infiltration, propaganda methods, direct contacts, doesn't really matter. I will describe them later. Of various areas where public opinion is formulated or shaped. Religion, educational system, social life, administration, law enforcement system, military, of course, and labor and employer relations, economy. Okay? 5 areas. I will not write them down because we will not have enough space. Sometimes when I describe all the methods, students ask me question, are you sure this is the result of the Soviet influence? Not necessarily. You see, the tactic of subversion, about which I'm talking, is similar to the martial art, the Japanese martial art. If some of you are familiar with that tactic, probably you will remember that if an enemy is bigger and heavier than yourself, it would be very painful to resist his direct strike. If a heavier person wants to strike me in the face, it would be very naive and counterproductive to stop his blow. The Chinese and Japanese judo art tells us what to do. First to avoid the strike, then to grab the fist and continue his movement in the direction where it was before, right? Until the enemy crashes in the wall. You see? So, what happens here? The target country obviously does something wrong. If it's a free democratic society, there are many different movements within the society. There are obviously, in every society, there are people who are against this society. They may be simple criminals, ideologically in disagreement with the state policy, conscientious enemies, simply psychotic personalities who are against anything, right? And finally, there are a small group of agents of a foreign nation, bought, subverted, recruited, right? The moment all these movements will be directed in one direction, right? This is the time to catch that movement and to continue it until the movement forces the whole society into collapse, into crisis, right? So that's exactly the martial art tactic. We don't stop an enemy. We let him go. We help him to go in the direction we want them to go. Okay?
Okay, y'all, just as a pre-warning, y'all about to see me in a robe because the night I had put this together, a thought came to my head while I was taking my friend to get something to eat. But, and, you know, I want y'all to watch this with an open mind. I just wanted to say that because, you know, a lot of this information I think is new to a lot of people because when I talk this way to people, you know, it's like it's like I'm trying to do something to them. I'm like, I'm not doing nothing. I'm just trying to bring up a conversation. So go in with this with an open mind. You know, I hope nothing that's been seen so far has been bad. But, you know, just want to say, don't mind the robe. It's going to be awesome. Okay, listen to this part and ask yourself, is America under attack? It's simple, okay? Ask yourself, do some research. All I'm doing is saying we need to start doing research and then understanding who we're listening to. Because I'm not asking anybody to listen to me. I'm just a random dude in a robe. So, are we under attack? If you don't know the answer to that question, then we have to take some time to figure it out, because if we don't, how do you know if you're looking at the right enemy if you don't know if you're under attack? All right, let's keep going. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot to mention, you know, it's important to know this information because, you know, this country, America, is older than all of us. So when we say, you know, the country America is at war, y'all, it's not us personally. I'm not saying you at war, like we are at war, you know, not like that. What I'm saying is the country of America has been trying to been taken over by a certain party for some time now. And it's important to know this information because then we can arm ourselves in a civic way, because all these laws that get changed since, you know, once again, before us, it's nothing personal, but it's good to know this stuff because, you know, the people who try to take over America, you know, them big boys, they play with big boy information and they play big boy games. And that's like them movies like House of Cards, TV shows like House of Cards and, you know, all that stuff, you know. But, you know, we just got to know this stuff, all right? Because that's the only way we can change our lives, if we actually know what's going on. So that's why I'm doing this. And it's very important to know that. So we got to buck up, you know. I sometimes say, you know, as an urban community ambassador, I'm saying, man, we got to really, really, really understand what's going on in our own home. This is America. This is the crib right now. For my brothers and sisters who want to go to Nigeria and Africa, let's do it. First of all, I'm going with ya. But please understand the game. You got to understand the game you're playing. You're not playing some 9-to-5 game when you're understanding law and politics. But we're in law and politics as we live and breathe. You guys are voting, but when's the last time you understood how to do the local votes? The reason I don't vote is because I don't know the shit. And this is truth. And I'm gonna get somebody to, and I'm gonna, you know, do my civic duty is what I'm gonna call it. But we really have to buck up. It is time.
So, on the stage of demoralization, obviously there are tendencies in each society, in each country, which are going to opposite direction from the basic moral values and principles. To take advantage of these movements, to capitalize on them, is the main purpose of the originator of subversion. So we have religion, we have education, we have social life, we have power structure, we have labor relations, unions, and finally we have law and order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? These are the areas of application of subversion.
Okay, just another question, right? I'm just here to bring up questions so we can think about this. Okay, I hope you looked up if we're under attack or not.
And this was revealed in the church committee.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to two American journals.
And of course, then the CIA destroyed the rest of the files, which is what they do. George H.W. Bush came out and finally made the statement about Mockingbird. Well, we're going to officially stop the Mockingbird program. The CIA will no longer pay journalists to write stories. From now on, the program is voluntary, which means Mockingbird continues today. When's the last time you've seen a mainstream media outlet do a serious investigative report on the actions of the CIA? There's a reason for that.
This would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully.
You say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 There is something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow on our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it.
But now, have we been a demoralized nation for 15 to 20 years? And let's think about this. He said we do this through 5 ways: religion, education, social life, admin, law, and military. Are these places demoralized? In school, do we really learn anything and get out and be empowered and motivated? We, ask yourself that. Is our religion, is it corruptive? Is it uniting us ultimately all together? Is it really making that connection with God? Think about that. Or has it been used in marketing and stuff? There's so many videos out about this, right? Social life, that's labor and employer relations. What's the big wealth gap right now? Is this a thing? And how much is this affecting how we look at each other as a nation? Admin, look at our government, look at politics, look what's happening right now. I literally have to pre-warn everybody that I'm not on anybody's side in order for me to just talk to y'all like people, and we're supposed to be able to just do this as humans, right? So law and military, how much are people reliant on law right now, or unreliant on law? Think about this. Does this just happen on accident in one country, or does this do we need to be pushed toward this, like my brother was saying? And then they find any group in the nation or society, criminals, LGBT who don't feel like they're represented enough, a female, right? We look at, is it a woman or not? Sometimes more than like the talent of the person or the skill. So think about this, all right? I'm just saying, think about it, and then think why it's happening. Is it happening just on accident, just out of nowhere? And I have another question. That's gonna be there. All right.
Means exactly. In case of religion, destroy it, ridicule it, replace it with various sects, cults, which bring people's attention, faith, whether it is naive, primitive, doesn't really matter. As long as the basically accepted religious dogma is being slowly eroded and taken away from the supreme purpose of religion, to keep people in touch with the supreme being, that serves the purpose. Therefore, replace it, accepted, respected religious organizations with fake organizations. Distract people's attention from the real faith and attract them to various different faiths. Education. Distract them from learning something which is constructive, pragmatic, efficient. Instead of mathematics, physics, foreign languages, chemistry, teach them history of urban warfare, natural food, home economy, your sexuality, anything, as long as it takes you away, okay? Social life. Replace traditionally established institutions and organizations with fake organizations. Take away the initiative from people. Take away the responsibility from naturally established links between individuals, group of individuals, and society at large, and replace them with artificially, bureaucratically controlled bodies. Instead of social life and friendship between neighbors, establish social workers institutions. People who are on payroll of whom? Society? No. Bureaucracy.
Okay, now be honest, how many people relying on them checks right now? And how many people really thinking about it in a way that, okay, well, somebody could be playing us, rather than like, hey, this is some good money right now for me. This is some good free money. All right? And think about this, all right? There's a thing called like the gift and bait.
Welfare, bread, and circus were basically distraction tactics used by the ruling elite who would offer promises of free stuff to ingratiate themselves with the public. We started a timeline that chronicled the parallels between the ancient Roman Empire and the United States of America today. When we left off, the Roman Empire was deteriorating thanks to the inflation caused by deficit spending on war and public works. Their government was constantly making things worse by meddling with their economy. Now, their empire was stretched to its limit and under constant attack from barbarians. The ongoing cost of war, plus the huge amounts of deficit spending, was bringing Rome to its knees. Now we're going to continue our journey through to the fall of Rome and learn of more striking parallels with the United States along the way.
The Romans were the first culture to have social programs. The Athenians had great public works, and they had the expense of war. But in Rome, they had the expense of all their great public works. They had the expense of massive armies occupying foreign lands, and they had the expense of social programs. During the end of the Roman Empire, Rome's population was approximately 1 million people, and 200,000 of them, 20%, were receiving daily distributions of wheat. That's welfare.
As their empire decayed, Roman leaders employed a tactic called bread and circus to keep the public distracted and placated. The bread refers to the free grain, also known as the dole, and circus translates to the games that would be held here in the Colosseum with free food, wine, and rather violent entertainment. I find it absolutely fascinating to try to imagine what was happening here nearly 2,000 years ago. These seats would have been filled with people eating and drinking, many would be yelling for their favorite gladiator, and a good portion of the audience would have been mindlessly drunk. The emperors and elite watching from up on high? What a scene! So the Colosseum is a great example of both the huge expense of Roman public works and the endless deficit spending they carried out to pay for supposedly free stuff. But is there such a thing as a free lunch?
Breads and circuses give away oil, give away grains, and give away wine, and people would love you. They conquered Egypt. By golly, that was a lot of grain you could give away. But what it did was destroy the economy. And when you put in the taxation to pay for it all, what it did was destroy the small farmer. And so the wealth creation that would enable you to do these things went by the boards, and so it became a vicious cycle.
So now let's continue filling in our timeline from the previous episode so that we can keep track of where we are in the story. Welfare, bread, and circus were basically distraction tactics used by the ruling elite who would offer promises of free stuff to ingratiate themselves with the public. There's a famous quote from the satirist Juvenal who summed up the situation very succinctly. Give them bread and circus, and they will never revolt. The citizens felt like they were getting these things for free, when they were actually paid for by a crushing double blow of continuous currency debasement and increased taxation. In the end, the only way that the Roman rulers could enforce this tax collection was by doubling down on their stifling bureaucracy. The size of their government compared to the private sector exploded. Business became incredibly difficult, and many simply gave up. Steve Forbes just mentioned how difficult the situation became for farmers, or husbandmen as they were referred to in the past. Here's a quote that backs that up from Lactantius around 300 AD. There began to be fewer men who paid taxes than there were who received wages, so that the means of the husbandman, being exhausted by enormous impositions, the farms were abandoned, cultivated grounds became woodland, and universal dismay prevailed.
All of these tourists go through the Colosseum here, all amazed at the ruins of a great civilization, and I have to ask myself, are they asking themselves, what happened to these people? Why did this thing fall into ruin? Everybody goes and they buy these trinkets at the gift shops and postcards and books, and they have their pictures taken here and there. I don't think any of them are thinking about the fact that most countries on the planet are doing exactly the same thing today.
Most of what Americans know, I fear, is what movie stars are doing, what sports stars are doing, and what occurred on the last installment of Jerry Springer or some other reality show. And the food stamps are not even food stamps anymore. They give you a credit card that you can buy your food with, so that you look like you can actually afford to eat as opposed to living off the dole. Yes, it's very similar.
People's relationship to money in a country like America, the biggest economy in the world, is based entirely on the benefits they get from consuming and consumerism. And right now, you have an era of popularization of drugs that are being used, like Prozac and other drugs, that people are taking massive quantities of while they're consuming popular culture for instant gratification. So you have instant gratification enhanced by drugs with a consumer culture with easy credit. So people are literally high all day long. They're consuming, they're on drugs, they've got cheap sugar, they've got cheap high fructose corn syrup in America thanks to those massive government subsidies. So they're basically spinning their tits 24/7, 365. Now, as soon as that value proposition changes, and you're not getting high as easily as you did yesterday, the cost of getting blitzed out of your skull on cheap drugs, cheap sugar, and cheap entertainment tips to an actual cost where you've got to actually put in a day's labor, then you're going to see social unrest. Then you're going to see real change, because those people suddenly are going to be facing reality without the benefit of being on drugs. And that's going to be a day when suddenly this economic model of consumption at the expense of humanity comes to a screeching halt.
So the ancient Romans had welfare, bread, and circus. Today, the USA has welfare and mass distraction. We've had the Colosseum-like venues for our games and theater for a long time, and now we also have people filling these Colosseums to watch digital gladiators battle each other in virtual esports events. These sporting and electronic spectacles, along with mindless entertainment like talk shows, are piped directly into our homes on TV, or now even to the cell phones in our pockets. We have the same politicians who constantly make impossible promises of free stuff, and a good portion of the population are hypnotized into believing them thanks to our modern version of bread and circus. Just like in ancient Rome, the USA has increased taxation in an attempt to pay for all of the so-called free stuff. And not surprisingly, we are now also burdened with a stifling bureaucracy in order to enforce the ridiculous amount of rules, taxes, and regulations. The size and scope of government has gone past anything that the founders of our country could have imagined in their worst nightmares, and now we face the same problem as ancient Rome. there are now fewer and fewer productive individuals and businesses left to fund the buffoonery of government. Remember, governments cannot create prosperity. They can only consume it.
All right. So how many people really rely on them checks? There's so many people rely on them checks. How many people rely on welfare? There's so many people rely on welfare. How many people rely on, you know what I'm saying, government assistance, SSI, all these things? How many people do that? A lot of us do, right? So if we're one of those people, then we're playing the wrong game already, because once again, now they have more control over you, because if they take that away, how are you going to get your goods? If they take that away, how are you going to get your goods? That's what we call control. Government comes from the root word to gov, is control, and then ment is mind. I think that's what it means, but it's mind control, basically. But you can look it up. I don't know. I'll put it in this video maybe. But anyways, don't be controlled, all right? And then really think about what he just said. The objective of this warfare is to distance people so they don't unite. If we keep them apart, they won't unite. So to keep them apart in any means, they don't care what they, like you said, it don't matter what they do. I don't care, as long as they stay apart from each other. Imagine my son right here just grew up his whole time. Like, I'm out here right now and I'm letting him play because of socialness. And yeah, people get mad at me, this COVID, because y'all playing the wrong game. You gotta stop playing. We gotta stop playing that game, because there's way more things killing humans right now than COVID, and nobody's talking about that. That's not fair. This isn't the only thing, is what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, why do we have to behave in a way to where this is the end all be all? Like, if you wear a mask, you either died right now or not. And that's not fair. But because it's put out and we all attaching ourselves to it, remember, the biases video gonna be after this. I promise. Or maybe, I hope it, I don't know, maybe play before, I don't know. But anyways, listen, we cannot let this control happen. So the reason it's happening is because we are not understanding that we have more power in our voices and in our intellect, but we have to actually put the information in our head. And thank you for going this far, because you are doing it. So you are one of them. And then, you know, we got to share this with other people, because if we don't share with other people, how they gonna know? And then they gonna be all messed up. You know what I'm saying? And we don't want them messed up. So if you somebody who actually understands what's going on, we're gonna have to keep sharing this. But anyways, I'm gonna keep this thing going. It's the longest video ever, but it's all in one place.
The main concern of social workers is not your family, not you, not social relations between groups of people. The main concern is to get the paycheck from the government. What will be the result of their social work doesn't really matter. They can develop all kind of concepts to show to the government and to the people that they're useful. Okay, away from the natural links, power structure. Okay, the natural bodies of administration, which are traditionally either elected by people at large or appointed by elected leaders of society, are being actively substituted by artificial bodies. The bodies of people, groups of people whom nobody elected. Never. As a matter of fact, most of the people don't like them at all, and yet they exist. One of such group is media. Who elected them? How come they have so much power, almost monopolistic power on your mind? They can rape your mind. But who elected them? How come they have a nerve to decide what is good and what is bad for the elected by you, president, and his administration? Who the hell are they? Spiro Agnew, who was hated by the liberal left, called them a bunch of enfeebled snobs. And that's exactly what they are. They think they know. They don't. The level of mediocrity. In a big establishment like New York Times, Los Angeles Times, major television network, you don't have to be excellent journalist. You have to be exactly a mediocre journalist. That's easier to survive. There's no competition anymore. You have your good, nice income, $100,000 a year. That's it. Whether you're better or worse doesn't really matter anymore. As soon as you're smiling to the camera and do your job. That's it. No more competition. Power structure slowly is eroded by the bodies and groups of people who do not have neither qualification nor the will of people to keep them in power, and yet they do have power. Okay. Together with that, there is another process. Law enforcement, law and order organization and structure is being eroded. For the last 20, 25 years, if you see old movies and new movies, you can see that in new movies, a policeman, an officer of the United States Army looks dumb, angry, psychotic, paranoid. A criminal looks nice, kind of, well, he smokes hash and shoots the whatever drug, but basically he's a nice human being. He's creative. And he's unproductive only because society oppresses him. Whereby a general of Pentagon is always, by definition, a dumb, a war maniac. A policeman is a pig, rude policeman. He abuses his power. You know? A generality, generalization like that. The hatred, the mistrust to the people who are supposed to protect you and enforce law and order. Moral relativity. The Angelo Buono process lasted 2 years in Los Angeles. Relativity. The Angelo Buono process lasted 2 years in Los Angeles. And yet there are still some lawyers who say, look, he's a nice character, as a matter of fact. There was some witness who said, also a criminal, who said, well, he's a nice guy. I asked him one day to burn a house of my enemy, and he wouldn't do it. He's a nice fella. Erosion. A slow substitution of basic moral principles, whereby a criminal is not a criminal, actually. He's a defendant. Even if his guilt is proven, there is still a doubt. To kill or not to kill, to be or not to be. Thou shalt not kill, yes. But this line may not necessarily be applicable to a murderer. Thou shalt not murder. That should be the presumption, not that thou shalt not kill. Okay, labor relations. At this stage, within 15 to 20 years, we destroy the traditionally established links of bargaining between employer and employee. The classical Marxist-Leninist theory of natural exchange of goods. Person A has 5 sacks of grain and person B has 5 pairs of shoes. And the natural exchange without money is when they bargain between each other. And only with the introduction of the third force, C, an entirely third foreign stranger who says, no, don't give him 5 sacks of grain, give it to me. And you give me your 5 pairs of shoes, and I will distribute it accordingly. So that the economy will go. This is the death of natural exchange, death of natural bargaining. Well,
so what's important to understand here is that, yes, we have a system that is easier to use. Like I literally just thought I had $10 on my card to pay for an item for my son's bike, and it didn't work. My card declined, you know. So I said, see how my account worked, and I couldn't do that because right now everything's so instant that really can't be an excuse. It was a good Kevin Hart joke, but in 2020. That shit don't count. We all know that everything is instant. So I called my friend up, or I voice text him, instant. I voice text him, I said, hey man, I need $20 right now. Boom, send it over. He sent it over. I was able to buy the thing. It's manageable, it's easy, I love it. But once that natural bargaining system got disrupted like that, the thing that happened is the ability to be able to create money out of nowhere occurred. And this is very important to understand because now this is what our governments and our banks and all these high elite people are fighting over. The ability of whoever can be able to control who prints the money. Because whoever can print the money, they have the ability to control, like, you know, the market, you know, where money goes, all this stuff. But if we all become like conscious aware people, we won't give a damn about that. There's a different way to live instead of an economic system. You know, we don't have to live as an economic system. That's why the natural bargaining system was in place, natural by nature, by God, by the universe, by the creator, whatever words you want to use. But what I'm trying to say is it's naturally here. We didn't need to create a man-made disrupted system, is what I'm trying to say. So now what we have to do is get the people right who is actually running the system. But that's up to me and you, and that's why I say we all got to step up a certain way, because if we don't step up and start taking charge of these systems, they're just going to be the same way, and we all still going to be getting messed up. And I think that's messed up. You know what I'm saying? I was in the military. I seen some other stuff on the other side that most of you probably haven't seen. What I'm trying to say is it's really messed up. We stay calm because one person can't do nothing. If I don't have people trying to gather with me, at least to talk about this and explore how we can just peacefully solve some stuff and make it better for everybody, including ourselves. I need people. We need to come together, and, you know, I'm saying I know solutions, and I'm one of those people because I see that a lot of people don't know this information. That's why I'm sharing it. So if this information is interesting to you, please hit me up, because if you watch this far, then you are a special one. Congratulations, my brother or sister or goddess or king or Davy or however you want to call it. But what I'm trying to say is, please, we all just got to come together for life, for humanity. All right. So this control stuff, it can be stopped by us and us only. If we keep listening and thinking that money is real, like the currency is fake, money is real.
The truth is, what we have that makes our world work right now is a big story. None of it's real. It's all just promises. And if you think about it, that's how currency began to work in the beginning. You know, before we had currency, we had barter. I'll give you 3 coconuts and you give me 4 fish, because that's kind of a fair exchange on coconuts to fish. But that got complicated, so we had to invent this thing called money to be a divisible, portable medium of exchange. And the challenge is that we lost that a long time ago, when we lost having things of value be our currency, and now we have this thing called numbers and accounts. But trust me, it is not real. It's a big made-up story.
Your true wealth is your time and freedom. Money is just a tool for trading your time. It's a container to store your economic energy until you're ready to deploy it. But the whole world has been turned away from real money and has been fooled into using currency. A deceitful imposter that is silently stealing your 2 most valuable assets.
Welcome to Egypt. This is where it all began. Roughly 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians started using gold and silver as their predominant form of currency. But it was not yet money. The pieces of gold and silver that they were using were odd sizes and weights, odd purities, so it still was not interchangeable, where each unit is the same as the next. This meant that nothing really had a price yet. You couldn't put a price of so many coins on something because they didn't have coins yet. Trade was still difficult. It was still a guessing game when it came to the exchange of values. One of the reasons that we are in the financial mess that we are today globally is that people do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency is a medium of exchange, a unit of account. It is portable, durable, divisible, and something called fungible. Fungible means that each unit is the same as the next unit. $1 in my pocket buys the same amount as $1 in your pocket. Money is all of those things plus a store of value over a long period of time. Even financial planners, bankers, your accountant, they don't understand the difference between currency and money. The currency in your pocket is a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account because it's got numbers on it. It's somewhat durable, it's portable, it's divisible in that you can make change, and it's fungible. $1 in my pocket buys the same amount as $1 in your pocket. But because governments can print more and more and more of it and dilute the currency supply, it's continually transferring wealth out of your pocket, out of your bank account, to the government and to the banking system. The reason that gold and silver are the optimum form of money is because of their properties. It's an easy medium of exchange because gold and silver store a large amount of value in a very small area. It's a unit of account. Pure gold has the same value all over the planet. So an ounce of gold buys the same amount here in Egypt as it would in China or in the United States. It's durable. The same gold that Egyptians were using in trade 5,000 years ago is still here with us today. It does not corrode. It's divisible. You can make change with it. It's very portable. You could use something like oil as money. It's just that you can't carry around a barrel of oil on your back. It's fungible. Pure gold is the same wherever it is on Earth. Pure silver is the same wherever it is on Earth. It's limited in quantity. That's the reason that it maintains its purchasing power. Governments cannot print it. Over the last 5,000 years, only gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. There have been thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies, currencies that are unbacked by gold or silver, and they have all gone to zero. It's a 100% failure rate.
Well, fiat currency, of course, is a currency that exists at the dictate or by fiat from a government. You see, they have their printing presses, and the paper money rolls off the printing presses. And then they give it the fiat designation, which makes the currency official. It's just worthless paper. But when Ben Bernanke gives it the special sign, and they have the cult meeting at the Federal Open Market Committee meetings, it suddenly becomes currency.
If you look at what's really going on, it's a con game. And so there's confidence. Well, the Federal Reserve is very forthright about what they're doing. If you read their websites, they'll tell you it's a confidence game. They tell you that there's no intrinsic value in their money. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. They actually display all these facts. But if you tell somebody in the public that this stuff is created out of thin air, there's no backing whatsoever, it's absolutely worthless, it's about as valuable as monopoly money, they'll look at you like you're nuts.
Is there an example throughout history of a fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked by anything, surviving?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. And here's why. When Addison Wiggin took over at the Daily Record, when they got cranked up, Bill Warner asked him to catalog all of the fiat currencies throughout history and what happened to each of them. Addison dutifully went to work. Within a short period of time, he had gone through the alphabet. All the fiat currencies that started with the letter A were done. They all went to zero. He was halfway through the letter B, and all the fiat currencies that started with the letter B, and there were 600 of them in just the first letter and a half of the alphabet, and every single one of them went to zero. Every one. 600 fiat currencies that start with the letter A, and half of the ones that start with the letter B are 600 of these things. Not one ever came close. Would you think this one, the United States dollar, is going to be the first one after all that? I don't think so. No. No currency, fiat currency has ever survived. None.
The thing about money is there actually is a fairly well accepted definition of what money is. The question is, as you apply that definition to particular things that people claim to be money, do they fit the definition? We'll just take the paper dollar, for example. How well does it perform those functions? Well, store of value. The dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So not very good as a store of value. One of the things I do is just a way to get the audience's attention is I have a slide, and there are 3 pictures on the slide. One is a pile of monopoly money. The other one is a pile of Federal Reserve notes, what Americans would call paper money. The other one is a solid gold American Eagle 1-ounce coin. And the title of the slide is, which of these is not like the other? And if you know the show Sesame Street, or you have children who watch it, it's one of the favorite vignettes in Sesame Street. And what it really is a kind of IQ test for 5-year-olds. They're supposed to look at the 3 things and look at characteristics and find the one that's not like the other. Well, I've shown this slide to groups of Ivy League university professors, and I've also shown it to children, kind of 5 years old, my nieces and nephews and so forth. And when the professors look at it, they say, well, clearly the dollars are not like the others, because gold has no role as money, and monopoly money is junk, and the American dollar is a store of value, so that's not like the other. But the children look at it and they say, well, the gold coin is not like the other, because the other two are just piles of paper, and the gold coin is clearly something different. So my question to the audience is, who's smarter, a 5-year-old or an Ivy League professor?
Before World War I, each note that a treasury issued would say that there have been deposited with the United States Treasury $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer upon demand. The money was in the vault. The currency was a note they gave you that was a claim check, only a claim check on the money, the same as if you go to the dry cleaners and you give them your shirt and they give you a claim check for your shirt. The value is that shirt at the dry cleaners, not the piece of paper that says that you own that shirt. So our currency that circulated was the paper US dollars, and they were claim checks on money.
The next hidden secret is the difference between currency and money. Money must be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. As we progress through this series, you'll learn that national currencies are really a tool used by the government and the financial sector to leech away your time and your freedom by stealing your purchasing power. So rather than storing your economic energy, currencies leak. Now compare that to the gold and silver the Egyptians were using. Like I started with, it still wasn't money because it wasn't interchangeable yet. But they were on the right track, as gold and silver have proven over thousands of years to be the ultimate store of value. Gold is only formed when a star explodes, a supernova, and it stays around forever. This is one of the properties that make it the ultimate money.
The ultimate money because there is nothing else even in the same league. It's divisible, it's permanent, it's a store of value, it's a unit of account. It's got everything you want out of money, but it doesn't go away and it can't be increased. That is what makes gold the most beautiful money of all. What more could you ask out of a money?
It keeps governments under control. You can maintain a solvent system. Governments don't like gold at present because they're getting away with the fiat currencies, and they'll do everything they can to discredit it as an asset class. I mean, my goodness, gold has outperformed the Dow Jones Industrial Average in each of the last 7 years, yet it's not considered a legitimate asset class. Why? Again, it's the fear that maybe gold will be imposed on the system, that it will constrain government ability to spend beyond its means.
They can't print it.
They can't print it, no.
Money is gold and silver, currency is fiat currency. So if we keep thinking that it is real, it controls us. Look at you, you're paying bills with monopoly money. Look at you, you're buying food with monopoly money. You can literally just go in there and grab it if you want to, because they don't put a price on it. When they put a dollar amount on it, that means there's no price on it actually. Once again, the Federal Reserve System knows that it's fake. If we know the system, then we can actually say, okay, well, we believe we should run the system like this. And then they just have to listen to us, because there's more of us and less of them. All right? So we can do this. I know it sounds so simple. It is simple, but it's hard because the anchoring bias and all those biases, remember all those biases, these things we have to watch. The game is not real, what they're playing against us. There's a different game, and we have to watch that, which is this money game. It's not a race game. They're playing all of us because, people get emotional, and we gotta stop. Anyways, hope I'm heard. I'm gonna holler at y'all. Keep watching it. Whoever got this far, bless your soul.
Trade unions were established 100 years ago. The objective was to improve working conditions and to protect the rights of workers from those employers who were abusing their right because they had more money. Objectively, at that time, initially, the trade union movement did work. What we see now is that the bargaining process is no longer resulting in the compromise which is leading objectively to betterment of working conditions and increase of salary. What we see is that after each prolonged strike, the workers lose. Even if they have 10% increase of their salaries, they cannot catch up due to inflation and due to missed time. More than that, millions of people suffer from that strike because economy now is interdependent. It's intertwined like one body. If previously steel workers, say 100 years ago, could strike and nobody would suffer, now it's impossible anymore. If a garbage collector strikes today, the rest of the multi-million city is still...
All right, so I'm gonna let y'all finish that video later. If y'all want, a link to all these videos are gonna be on a Google Doc that I'm gonna have attached in the description. The link in my bio on Instagram, Facebook's gonna be in the description, YouTube's gonna be in the description. And coming up next is the cognitive bias. I hope y'all checked the last video out. If it's in a different video, if it's all in one video, then I hope you checked it out about KGB and if we're possibly under attack. Not as like a country attacking another country, but in order for subversion to work, the receiving country has to basically have a system that can allow it, because it can't just be allowed. So why is our country not locked up? How come we left our country open to be able to be attacked, even though we know all these tactics? I hope this seems crazy enough for you to look into it, and then ask yourself, why would these other countries, or Russia in this case from this guy, why would they force their students to understand this? And we don't. You can't even find the information. Well, I'm pretty sure now you can. It's 2020, so it probably can, but it's not the norm is what I'm saying. And my answer to that is, in the other countries, they actually care if their people know how to defend themselves or not. So they say, hey, read this stuff because I want you guys to know, just in case. But in America, when we're under attack, in a subversion type of attack, none of the citizens know. That doesn't seem crazy that we're not putting this on media and things like that. Just ask yourself. And this next part is cognitive biases. It's the 12 cognitive biases, but there's more. We have a bunch of them in our system, but this is just 12. And make sure after you watch this, maybe go watch the video again from the beginning. I know I had a lot of parts in there of me, but really take this in. It's gonna be one video you need just to really understand what's happening in the world and in your system and in the countries.
And in this video, we're going to be talking about 12 cognitive biases. Most of these were researched by Ismanoff TV, who has some great animations on topics like these and other self-development topics, so check them out in the description or on the end screen. Now let's get into it. Number 1 is anchoring bias. We humans usually completely rely on the first information that we receive, no matter how reliable that piece of information is, when we take decisions. The very first information has tremendous effect on our brain. For instance, I want to sell you a car, and you are interested to buy it. Let's say you ask me what the price is, and I tell you $30,000. Now, if you come back a week later and I say I'll sell it to you for $20,000, this seems like a new, very cheap price to you, right? Because your judgment is based on the initial information you got, which was $30,000. You feel like you're getting a great deal, but let's say the first time that you ask me and I say $10,000, and then you come back the next week and I tell you I'm going to sell it to you for $20,000. Now it doesn't look like a very good deal because of the anchoring bias. This is just a very generic use of the anchoring bias, and I don't want a bunch of comments about why a $30,000 car should be sold for $10,000, but another example is trees. What if I asked you if the tallest tree in the world was higher or lower than 1,200 feet? And if so, how tall? The same effect occurs if I asked you to guess out of thin air instead of giving you an anchor of 1,200 feet. The results are crazy. Number 2, availability heuristic bias. People overestimate the importance of information that they have. Let me give you an example here. Some people think that terrorism is the biggest threat to the United States because that's what they see on TV. The news always talks about it, and because of that, it inflates the danger. But if you look at the real perspectives, televisions cause 55 times more deaths than terrorism. Yes, TVs literally fall on people and kill them 55 more times than terrorism. You are more likely to be killed by a cow than a terrorist, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It's more likely to die from a coconut falling on your head and killing you than a terrorist attack. Thank you, Gary Vaynerchuk, for that one. Even the police that are hired to protect you from terrorists, it's estimated that you are 130 times more likely to be killed by the police than by a terrorist. That's because people do not make their decision based on facts and statistics, but usually they make it on news and stories and stuff they hear from other people. It's way scarier to die from a terrorist attack than a falling coconut, and because of this, usually the news won't cover it because there's not much money in it. Number 3 is the bandwagon effect. People do or believe in something not because they actually do believe it, but because that's what the rest of the world believes in. In other words, following the rest without thinking. If you've ever heard someone say, well, if your friends jump off a bridge, would you? Then that someone is accusing you of the bandwagon effect. It happens a lot with us. I mean, a lot of people vote for a certain candidate in the election because he's the most popular, or because they want to be part of the majority. It happens a lot in the stock market too. If someone starts buying a stock because they think it's going to rise, then a lot of other people are going to start picking the stock as well. It can also happen during meetings. If everyone agrees on something, you are more likely to agree with them on that object. In management, the opposite of this is called groupthink, and it's something companies try very hard to deter. Because if 9 out of 10 people agree on something, but the last person doesn't and won't speak up, it could squelch a great idea. Number 4 is choice supportive bias. So people have the tendency to defend themselves because it was their choice. Just because I made the choice, it must be right. For example, let's say a person buys an Apple product. Let's say it's a MacBook instead of a Windows PC. Well, he's more likely to ignore the downsides or the faults of the Apple computer while pointing out the downsides of the PC. He is more likely to notice the advantages of the Apple computer and not the Windows computer. Why would someone point out that they made a bad decision? Well, let's say you have a dog. You think it's awesome because it's your dog, although it might poop on the floor every now and then. The same goes for political candidates. Not the pooping part, but they both may suck. But one of the lesser of two evils may be more right in your mind because you voted for them. Number 5, confirmation bias. We tend to listen to information that confirms what we already know, or even interpret the information that we receive in a way that confirms the current information that we already have. Let's say that your friend believes that sweets are unhealthy. This is generally a pretty broad belief. He will only focus on the information that confirms what we already know. He is more likely to click on videos that confirm that belief, or read articles that support his argument. He doesn't go through and type, positive health effects of increasing blood glucose levels, or positive effects of eating a bowl of ice cream. No, he will instinctively go to Google and type in, how bad is sugar for you? The confirmation bias is very dangerous in scientific situations, and is actually one of the most widely committed cognitive biases. Number 6, the ostrich bias. This is the decision, or rather subconscious decision, to ignore the negative information. It may also be an indication we only want to consider the positive aspects of something. This goes beyond not only looking for the positive information, but this is when there is negative information and we choose to ignore it as an outlier. Sometimes, even when we have a problem, we try to ignore it thinking it will go away. Let's say you have an assignment to do. It's not something that you really want to do, so you may just keep on procrastinating with it because your mind thinks that it'll go away or is solved by ignoring it. Smokers usually, they know it's bad for their health, but a lot of them keep ignoring the negative implications of cigarettes, thinking it will not damage them or might stop them before anything serious will happen, because they consider themselves an outlier. To avoid finding out negative information, we just stop looking for it. Now, this could be a serious crime in many scientific research laboratories, and basically promotes ignorance. Number 7, outcome bias. We tend to judge the efficacy of a decision based primarily on how things turn out. After a decision is made, we rarely examine the conditions that existed at the time of the decision, choosing instead to evaluate performance solely or mostly on whether the end result was positive or not. In other words, you decide whether an action is right or wrong based on the outcome. This goes a little bit into consequentialism, but it goes hand in hand with the hindsight bias. Let's say there's a manager who wants to take the decision. His team and the data are telling him to make one decision, but his gut is telling him to make another decision. Well, he goes ahead and makes the decision that his gut told him to do. And then in the end, it was the right decision. Does that mean it's actually better to trust your gut rather than listen to your team who is advising you based on facts and statistics? Well, that's what the outcome bias is. You take the decision and base the effectiveness of your decision on the outcome, even if it was luck. Now, this is bad logical thinking and will actually lead you to ruined thinking and bad outcomes in the long run. Number 8, overconfidence. Sometimes you get too confident and start taking decisions not based on facts, but based on your opinion or gut because you have been correct so many times in the past. For example, you are a stock trader and you pick 5 stocks, and in a couple years, all of them turn out to be successful or profitable. It increases your confidence to a point to where you can start believing that whatever stock you pick will be successful. It's quite dangerous because you might stop looking at the facts and solely rely on your opinion. Check out the gambler's fallacy if you want more information on this. Just because you flipped a coin 5 times and it landed on heads doesn't mean that the next time there's more than a 50% chance of it landing on a head again. Ego is the Enemy is a great book about this bias, and I just made a book review on it. Number 9, placebo bias. When you believe something will have a certain effect on you, then it will actually cause that effect. For instance, you are sick and the doctor gives you a certain medicine. Even if that medicine does not actually help you, even if it's just made of sugar, you believe that it will help you and it actually causes you to recover quicker. This might not sound very logical, but dozens of experiments have proven this. That's why, if you realize positive people usually have a positive life, and vice versa. The way you think is super important, and we've hit on this in previous videos. For the same reason, a lot of personal development books say that if you really believe something, you will eventually achieve it, or at least find a way to achieve it. Because the placebo effect will give you the motivation that you need. The mind truly is a powerful thing. And this actually isn't always bad thinking. In fact, you can use the placebo effect in our advantage if we use it wisely. There's actually a reverse of this, and it's called the nocebo, and this is when it is negative. Number 10, survivorship bias. This bias is when you are judging something based on the surviving information. Let me give you an example here. There are a lot of articles titled like, 5 things millionaires do every morning. Does that mean doing those things every morning will make you a millionaire? No, there are tons of people who did them and didn't become a millionaire, but there are also tons of people who did them and did become a millionaire. So these articles are primarily based on the ones who survived and reject all other people who did the same thing but did not become millionaires. Another example is to say that buildings in an ancient city were built using extreme engineering because they lasted so long. This is a bad conclusion because you aren't considering what ratio of buildings were built to how many that lasted. You're only seeing the ones that lasted thousands of years of weathering, when the other 90% have already washed away. It's hard to know what you don't know. Number 11, selective perception. I like this one. Selective perception is a form of bias that causes people to perceive messages and actions according to their frame of reference. Using selective perception, people tend to overlook and forget that contradicts their beliefs or expectations. Let's say, for example, you're a smoker and you're a big fan of soccer. You are more likely to ignore all the negative advertisements about cigarettes because since you are already smoking, you have this perception that it's okay to smoke. But if there's an advertisement about soccer, you are more likely to notice it because you have a very positive perception about it. This is actually something really interesting and has to do with how you perceive the world due to your subconscious mind and what it filters out. The last one is called the blind spot bias. If I asked you how biased you are, you would probably say that you are less biased than the average person, and you are more likely to base your judgment on facts and statistics, and that's what's known as a blind spot bias, or the bias bias. You are biased because you think that you are less biased than everyone else. For example, I gifted something to my teacher, and the next week she gave me a good grade on a test. If you ask her whether she was biased when she gave me that grade, the answer will be that the gift never affected her decision when marking my paper. But if you ask her if other teachers are biased when students give them gifts, she will say yes, in most cases. And that's what the blind spot bias is. I really enjoyed creating this video, but most of the content was curated by my friend Ismanov. He's got a channel similar to mine, and I'd like you to check it out here or in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something. If you want more valuables like this, check out my channel and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so in this next section, it is basically about how I'm seeing things as far as this election and, you know, where I come from this is I like to look at a lot of information that is out, understand what is going on with myself. I like to say spiritually first, and then I look at the world. All right, hope that makes sense. Don't look at the world first and then spirit. Look at the spirit first and then the world. Because if the worldly stuff is so demanding, it's going to start messing up your spirit. But if your spirit is in balance, then it can create the material world the way that you see fit. So I like to look at all this information that you guys are about to see, and then y'all decide what you feel, who the next person is best to run the country. Don't just come off of any biases. Don't just come off of some information that media put out. Don't just come off of what somebody is fighting for their own agenda, as AKA the political party is saying. Don't do anything. Just take in all the information and then you decide. But our country is a big game. I hope you guys can see that now based off this last video. If you haven't checked out the last video, do it. But the country and the way the world is being ran right now, it's like a big game that's not focused on humanity, but focused on power and control. So with that being said, take a look at this information and think how chess is played. Don't think that, okay, well, just because one person said one thing, I need to believe it. really dive into it. All right. So I'm gonna put out some of these rest of these videos, and yeah, let's go from there. See what happens.
The deep state. There really is such a thing as the deep state. It's a term that was coined in Turkey during the Ottoman Empire. And the deep state is the people that actually run the country. That you don't usually think of that. It's not the president and his cabinet, although they're part of the deep state. It's top academics, it's top generals, top corporate guys that run the big NGOs, big fund managers, top senators, the heads of the Praetorian agencies, FBI, DEA, NSA. There are about 15 of them that would fall into that class. So these are the guys that all, it's not a conspiracy per se. They don't all get together and stroke white cats, but they have the same views and the same values and the same objectives. Their nests are feathered the same way, basically living off the state. So the deep state hates and despises Trump and supports Biden and the Democratic Party. And they're really powerful because they control, things like Facebook and Amazon and Google. These are all very anti-Trump companies. And they, look, they're even taking out ads. You remember that Gillette ad that came out a couple of years ago where it had a bunch of white guys barbecuing, and the ad basically said, get woke and turn into a social justice warrior and put away you remember that ad, right? We should
exactly.
Like people haven't seen it.
Toxic masculinity was attacking.
Toxic masculinity, right, exactly. So this is part of the moral collapse too, but the thing is that the deep state is, and all these corporations are doing everything that they can to make sure Trump doesn't get elected. And like I said, this isn't going to affect dyed-in-the-wool Trumpers. They're going to vote for Trump regardless. But I'm talking about the people in the middle, the 30 or 40% of the country that are swing voters. It has a big effect on them. So, and the deep state wasn't really out during the last election. Why? Because they thought there's nothing to worry about. Hillary's going to walk over this. We don't have to do anything. But this time, they're worried, and they're going to come out in force for Hillary. So it's going to be serious. But,
yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, they seem to even if you look at all of the efforts to get Trump once he was elected, there seemed like there was so much effort on the part of, certainly the news media, which you've already talked about that, but also, the FBI and Department of Justice, like just even keeping certain facts that would have, shown that there was nothing there, keeping those, under wraps so no one could know. So it would keep going on for so long. So it does seem as though that those people would be actively working against him again. Just as hard to imagine they wouldn't, whatever that means, active working against him. Maybe it's just collusion with the media to try and, have more releases of bad news that just like disparage Trump, like saying that he, was saying terrible things about the troops, for instance, like that kind of stuff that just gets released from these anonymous sources. Like those are deep staters, right? Wouldn't that be what you call deep state?
Yeah, completely. And one of the things that is problematical about Trump is that he seems to have shown really bad judgment with the people he surrounds himself with. Yeah. He should have rooted out all these people to start with, but there's all kinds of people, from his personal lawyer to who's that general, Mad Dog, whoever.
Yep, Mattis, yep.
Yeah, they all come out and say terrible things about him. Whether they're true or not, I actually don't know. I don't know the man. But it's bad judgment to have these people in the room with you to start with. I don't know what's going on in his head. But
Yeah.
anyway, these 5 things that we've talked about so far are very important, but they're not nearly as important as what's really going to determine the election. And that's cheating. And I think that's going to be really major this time. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and look, the Democrats are much better at cheating than the Republicans. And they've done a lot more of it over time. And both of the parties are terminally corrupt, but the Democrats are much better at cheating. And I mentioned I grew up in Chicago, and it was a joke even then that the ballot boxes were stuffed. And books like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals wasn't written for Republicans that believe in Boy Scout virtues. So cheating is going to be very big. I mean, and they're talking about mail-in votes, but it impresses me as a pretty stupid idea, because you can register dead people as voters. You can register your dog as a voter. For all I know, this time around, you might be able to get away with registering 50 million Nigerian princes as voters. And if the fraud's ever even discovered, it's not going to be discovered for months afterwards. And it's going to mean there's going to be a contested election and lawsuits and you know, this is the stuff of a civil war that we're talking about.
I think you're right about this one for sure, because I think that the way that I imagine it going is that even if Trump wins, you know, on election day, it looks like he won. The stage has been set to make it extremely contested. Like Facebook announced that they won't allow candidates to claim victory on election day, you know, prematurely. That Facebook is going to determine if a candidate is prematurely claiming victory, which is a weird thing for a company like that to take that position, you would think, but this goes to the deep state item you talked about a moment ago. And then in addition to that, I heard something like 100 million mail-in ballots are being sent to people. So, you know, the biggest difference with these mail-in ballots is that, you know, they basically are sending them out to everyone who is on the voter rolls already. And so, you know, you don't have to prove that you're one of those people, and they're just mailing them out to whatever they have on record. And it's well known that the voter rolls are not the best database in the world. Like, they're not the most accurate that's out there. And so lots of, you know, people who have already died are going to get these almost certainly, and lots of maybe cats and dogs and the Nigerian princes too. But when that happens, actually I saw, there was someone I saw the other day who he received a ballot in California that was like a libertarian party, which he was registered as. And then he also got another ballot in his name that was an unaffiliated. So he got 2 ballots in his name based upon his party registration. So, you know, there's just even those kinds of errors that can happen, I think, you know, can make it possible for multiple votes to take place. So, you know, and it takes forever, much longer for them to determine, you know, what the results of those mail-in votes are. So, you know, you just expect the lawyers to be deployed and it to be, you know, deeply contested across the board for months. And maybe, you know, with these nightmare scenarios I've heard is that Nancy Pelosi ends up being president.
Yeah, well, as they say.
If Trump gets elected, I really do believe in my heart there'll be a race war. That's why this message is not just to black people. You know what I'm saying? This message is to everybody. You know, this man is really trying to turn us against each other and put us in a situation. America messed up. Me and you've been talking for a minute about, you know, chopping it up and some real talk, you know what I'm saying, where it's not for the whole social media effect. Like, when I look at the videos of, like, you know, Malcolm, Martin, Stokely, You know what I'm saying? I wish I could have seen a black man conversation. I couldn't have talked to nobody about what we're going to talk about but you. You know what I'm saying? That's a testament to your journalism. Man, you're an inspiration to me, bro.
I want to see where you at. I want to see where you at. You know, you sparked a crazy conversation when you told everybody to hold their vote.
Yeah.
I want to see where you at with it.
So, a couple of months I told everybody hold their vote hostage. A lot of things have gone on since then. None of us expected. I think this president has done a great job of rattling America. When you move in fear, you don't have any leverage. The way I felt before is the way I still feel. Things have got too serious of a point. Seeing what's going on, white men like Trump need to be banished. That way of thinking is real dangerous. This man literally threatened the lives of us and our families about going to vote.
Stand back and stand by.
Stand back and stand by.
Yeah.
We're in a war. We're not taking this like it's a war. We're taking this like, oh, we're in a presidential election. No, we're in a war of love versus hate. The #1 priority is to get Trump out of office. The tribe of people that have the responsibility and really should be scared to death of this man is white people.
Explain.
If this man is elected, we're not standing by no more getting killed. We're not scared of anybody standing up and standing by. We're on the verge of a race war. If people in America want a race war, they'll not vote. I'm an independent, first of all. When I vote, I try to do what's best for my community.
Let's be clear on that. You're not standing behind your decision to hold your vote anymore. You want people to go out there and vote.
It would be irresponsible of me to have us hold our vote hostage. But it would also be irresponsible of me to just let this moment go by. The world is watching, and not do everything I can to make sure that going forth that we're a part of the narrative, that we own our politics. And so I'm launching one of the boldest movements that I've ever launched. And it's called Our Black Party.
Okay.
It's time for us to have our own black political party, unapologetically. Because right now, if you look at the debates, we're not even a part of the conversation.
Not at all.
We're not a part of the conversation. We don't have any political power. We don't have any political leverage. And so we started Our Black Party with some young, fearless black activists, elected officials, and I've stepped up and put the money behind it. This is the biggest threat and the only option that we have right now as far as making a change, taking our own self-responsibility and accountability to be educated and empowered with our vote.
So what's the goal for Our Black Party?
Our Black Party's #1 goal is to unify behind a black agenda. That's it. You could be a part of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you could be an independent, but if you black, you wasn't born Republican, you wasn't born Democrat, you wasn't born independent, you was born black. And we have to seize our political power because it'll just be more the same. Being pushed this way, being pushed that way, and we expecting
a different result.
But the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over the same way, expecting a different result, and it's not going to happen. So we have to change the tone. We got to start with us stepping up and really taking the responsibility and accountability to be a part of this political movement.
The hardest part of that is going to be getting other black people to buy into it.
This is not for all black people. You know what I'm saying? This is not for the scary ones. This is for the ones that want to move things forward and want to get to the smoke. A black person spends an average of like 5 hours on Instagram a day. If you could give Instagram that time, 15 minutes you could give to educating yourself. And our Black Party's that platform. So when we get down to the local elections, when we get down to the school board, we get down to the judges and the justices, that's so confusing for us. We've never played this game. This is another level of gangster. But I played this game before, you know? I started in 2004 with Vote or Die, and this is the evolution of that thought, of that empowerment, of that independence, of us taking self-accountability so we're not caught with our pants down like this election. Right now, we're not gonna get nothing. We caught with our pants down. We're not organized, we're not ready to really take this on.
Hold up, let me ask you, what's the difference between Vote or Die Diddy and Hold Your Vote Diddy? And what occurred between those two phases that made the change happen?
I went through the experience of politics. I played the game with the Democratic Party. The people that I went and campaigned for, after
crazy election, and you don't have to pretend like it isn't. I know the media is trying to tell you this is totally normal, but deep down in your soul, you know it's not. And I'm about to show you all the bizarre things going on, but before I do, they're trying to say election fraud isn't possible, it's not possible to rig an election. But let's be honest, it happens all over the world, and that's like saying it's not possible to rob a cash register. Anybody that's going to tell you that is highly suspicious of actually trying to do it. Duh. So let's look at every reason this election is totally bizarre. This from Politico. A burst pipe delays Atlanta absentee vote counting. So they used the pipe bursting as an excuse to delay their counting. It says the water leak at State Farm Arena on Tuesday delayed absentee vote count by 4 hours, but did not damage any ballots, the paper reported. So it didn't damage any ballots, but it gave them a reason to delay. Interesting. Georgia Secretary of State says some counties have forgotten to click the upload button, so they've sent a reminder out. Biggest election of our lifetime, just forgot to hit the upload button. That makes sense. Perhaps the least sneaky one of all, 538 reported 2 more batches of Pennsylvania vote were reported, 23,277 votes in Philadelphia, all for Biden. I'm guessing the statistical chances of this are close to 0, if not 0. All of the votes were for Biden, even in the most Democrat district, in the most Democrat city, in the most Democrat neighborhood. You're not going to find all of the votes for Biden. Maybe you'll find 90-10, maybe you'll find 85-15, maybe you'll even find 95-5. But 100% to 0% for Joe Biden, they're not even trying to be sneaky. They don't have to, because they know Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter will censor anybody who questions them, as they've set up the path to do stuff like this all year, and I'll tell you how in a second. But first, doesn't anybody feel like it's kind of weird how long they're taking? I mean, social media told us for weeks they were going to take this long. It's going to take days, it's going to take weeks. Just stay calm, this is normal. So now that it's happening, what's their excuse for taking so long to vote? Florida's one of the biggest states in the country, and they got their votes in, but we're supposed to think that Nevada and Georgia and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Alaska just mysteriously can't count their ballots in time, when certain states with 2 to 3 times the population they have can count their ballots on time? What's going on? Well, let's look at their excuses. Just in, instead of delaying releasing results until tomorrow, Nevada officials will release more results later today due to the high interest of how Nevada voted. So they're claiming they didn't know there was a high interest in voting, and now that everybody wants, I guess people actually want to know the results of the election, so we'll move it up to later today. Are we really supposed to believe that they didn't know that there was a high interest in voting, and that's the reason they gave to shift the time period? This is beyond sketchy and bizarre, but social media wants you to not think it is. It obviously is. What a horrible excuse, but it might not even be the worst one. Pennsylvania County explains vote counting pause, says staff is doing administrative work before resuming Friday, and some 35,000 remaining ballots are expected to be counted on Friday. I mean, they have administrative work to do. It's the most important election. It's crunch time. You pay billions, if not trillions of dollars in taxpayer money for government to do stuff, but they're busy until Friday, right? North Carolina won't update its total vote until November 12th. That's in a week. The state is crucial for President Trump's path to victory, so we'll just resume count next week. That makes sense, right? Well, of course not, but I guess if you hate President Trump, you're just pretending like this is normal, and anybody who questions it's crazy, because you believe the mainstream media and social media and Democrats and late night hosts who told you can't possibly rig an election. Just like you can't rob a cash register, just like crime doesn't exist. I mean, if you suggest that it's happening, you're the conspiracy theorist. Who believes this stuff? I don't know. And last but not least, according to NBC News correspondent Gaddy NBC, he says Arizona election officials told him the final ballot count result in Maricopa County probably won't come tomorrow, and it could be this weekend. It's like they're just playing a game with you to figure out when they will and won't count the votes. But this especially matters in this election because something happened that never happened. This isn't a normal election. These aren't normal rules. In multiple states, they used COVID-19 as an excuse to mail every single person on the voter list roll a ballot. Usually you vote in person if you want, or you request an absentee or mail-in ballot if you want to vote by mail. Of course, they don't just send every single person on the voter roll a mail-in ballot. And maybe more importantly, 35 states, including many of the sketchy ones and still counting today, allowed voters to cite coronavirus as an excuse to vote absentee. I requested to vote in person and they still sent me a ballot. This is not normal. So there's tens of millions of ballots all over the place that people didn't request in multiple states. It doesn't take a genius to figure out how this isn't a good idea. But once again, you get censored if you even suggest it's a bad idea. Nevada's reporting a grieving family now has to deal with voter fraud. Tamara speaks emotionally about finding that someone voted using her deceased grandmother's identity. Think about the tens of thousands, if not the millions across all states, of people who are dead, people who moved, people that had no idea that they're getting a ballot because they didn't request one, just all over the place. This is ripe for fraud, but you're not allowed to say this video might get deleted just for telling you the truth. The GOP in Nevada seems to be on it. They're sending a criminal referral to Attorney General Barr of at least 3,062 instances of fraud. We'll see what happens. And he's been mostly absent recently, but Attorney General Barr explained to people how this isn't a normal election and how this is a horrible idea earlier this year.
The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in. Elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud and coercion.
As far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since.
Well, we haven't had the kind of widespread use of mail-in ballots that's being proposed. We've had absentee ballots from people who request them from a specific address. Now what we're talking about is mailing them to everyone on the voter list when everyone knows those voter lists are inaccurate. People trying to change the rules to this methodology, which as a matter of logic is very open to fraud and coercion, is reckless and dangerous. And the people are playing with fire.
And once again, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you should want a fair election. They say Trump's Hitler, Trump's Kim Jong-un. If that were the case, wouldn't you want to make sure that there were no fraud like dictators in other countries do? I mean, obviously you can rig and cheat in an election. And anybody who tells you that it's not possible to rig an election and not possible to cheat in an election sounds pretty guilty to me. But that's what they're doing. And as they're doing that, the New York Times said the role of declaring the winner of a presidential election in the US falls to the news media. So they want you to believe it's not the votes, it's not the Secretary of State, it's not the people counting the votes. The role of declaring the winner is the media. They'll tell you when they win or lose, which is interesting because even Fox News sold Trump out, and we're reporting he lost Arizona, that he might actually win. It's going to come down to the wire, and they called it super early. It's almost like they're trying to tell people who won, delay the election, stall the election, and then get the results that they want to happen. And no, these rules are not normal. This is not how we usually conduct an election. Remember how I told you that they sent out millions upon tens of millions of mail-in ballots to every single person on the voter roll, whether they requested it or not? On top of that, in two of the most crucial states that will probably decide this election, they determined that they're allowed to count ballots days after the election. Amy Coney Barrett sat it out, and the Supreme Court allowed longer deadlines for absentee ballots in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. North Carolina has like over a week to count these ballots. Trump was doing so well on election night, he was actually on many betting websites an 80-20 favorite, and then they were allowed to look at exactly how many votes he's up. They froze the election and said, you know, we're going to stop counting now. We'll count later. We didn't count as much as we thought we'd count, but we'll get the counts done over the next couple days. Is that not sketchy to people? Do people not understand how, of course, that could be ripe with fraud? They don't want you to even think that because they want to do it and get away with it. So not only did they do mass mail-in ballots, not only did they extend the amount of days that you can count ballots in states like Pennsylvania, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court also ruled that the signatures don't have to match the ballot. Even in New Jersey, if your signature doesn't match your signature, your vote doesn't count. That's how they protect fraud. That's why it's there. In Pennsylvania, they ruled even if the signature doesn't match, your vote will still count. In a lot of Republican states, you have a voter ID. You need an ID to go in a hotel. You need an ID to get on a plane. You need an ID to do almost anything in this country. But when I voted, they just asked me my name and my address. For some people, it's just your name. I'm wearing a mask to the election. They can't even see my face, and they let me vote. Of course, I didn't cheat, but it's not hard to figure out how easy it would be to cheat. But Democrats want you to believe it's racist to suggest that you need an ID. So no ID, millions of ballots out there. In many states, they legalized ballot harvesting, which means you could bring somebody else's ballot to the ballot box. They can count for days. This is insane, but we all saw this coming. So they could count ballots days after the election. How is that possible? If the ballot comes in a couple days later, but it's postmarked for the day of the election or before, then they're allowed to count it. And interestingly enough, A whistleblower came out in Pennsylvania and said that his postmaster at USPS was ordering workers to illegally backdate ballots to November 3rd. And then they would count that ballot even though the ballot came in days late. These are the rules, and they're figuring out exactly what they need to do to make up the vote count. So when President Trump says he wants to count all legal ballots, he's not trying to suppress the vote. He's trying to just let it be fair. They should get all the votes in and they should freeze the election, not just drag it out for 2 weeks and then people can decide how much they're down, and then they have dozens of ways to try to make up the vote. This is nuts. And Pennsylvania is one of the most corrupt states. This is the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, a very powerful position. In 2017 said using the title president before the word Trump really demeans the office of the presidency. So she's one of those Trump's not my president type of people. Listen, Obama was my president. George Bush was my president. Nancy Pelosi is the House leader. I don't like her, but that's just the truth. I'm not a total delusional person who doesn't accept the office. It's real. That's a fact. But they don't accept facts. These people are not to be trusted. And this is who's overseeing it? Well, not just her. Josh Shapiro, who's the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, he said days before the election, he said if all the votes are added up in PA, Trump is going to lose. Wait, he declared Biden the winner and Trump the loser before anybody even voted in person? This is insanely bizarre. But these are the people who are counting the votes. Am I supposed to sit and pretend like they would never cheat? It's not possible to cheat. There's no way to do voter fraud when I looked at all the ways that mail-in ballots changed this year and counting rules changed this year. I mean, it's obvious, but I'm supposed to just not think it's not even possible when the people in charge are clearly biased and will do anything to achieve power. And I've watched my freedom and lifestyle slip this year because of COVID-19. They used it as justification for lockdowns, mask mandates. I mean, they changed American society forever and shut off the economy. And I watched how they did it, in many ways with dishonest data and dishonest counting. If you don't believe me, here's New York Times reporting earlier this year, the city has added more than 3,700 additional people who were presumed to have died of the coronavirus but had never tested positive. That's correct. Thousands of people, if not more, have been added to the list of COVID deaths and they never even had a COVID test. If this is the type of counting they're doing with the election, of course I don't trust it. I don't trust their numbers, not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, because I look at the CDC data, I look at how New York's counting, I look at how they're lying, I look at deaths per capita, I look at all of it, and I realize these people will never tell the truth. They will never give you the real numbers. They will just censor, try to control the media, try to control what you can and can't say, and can and can't question them, and tell you, will never lie to you, just live like a prisoner in this new medical state that we have you in. Don't question it, and if you even suggest that an election could be rigged, or there's any such thing as voter fraud, you're the bad guy for even thinking that. What sane person on the planet believes this? This is a former Barack Obama speechwriter in Georgia. He said, anyone in Georgia, Team Joe needs people to go door to door helping voters fix their mail-in ballots so they can count. Sign up. How would they fix their mail-in ballots that they haven't even sent out yet a day after the election to get them to count? What's he talking about? What's he doing? I guess we're just supposed to ignore it and say that this is normal. And they're censoring the President of the United States, his family, and any Republicans, even if they say in some cases a factual statement. Jason Miller said massive legal victory just now. More to follow shortly. This post was censored. They did have a legal victory in Pennsylvania today. That's a fact. So you can't even say that. This is like out of 1984, a sci-fi movie. Look at this person's feed. Censored. The President of the United States being censored. Julian's Rowe makes a great point. He said, just so I have this straight, every tweet must be fact-checked for accuracy, but literally no ballots should be. We're going to fact check your tweets, but not your identity, aka voter ID, not ballots to make sure they're legit and nobody's counting and nobody's cheating. You can't cheat, they say. What a joke. This post was insightful on my Facebook post. He said, as a son of an immigrant, my folks usually told me how they stole elections in Africa, and it's just similar to how Dems are doing it. Mysterious votes come at night, and when we wake up, they are leading. This is sad and crazy how America is going cheating this way. On Twitter, someone said, I work with an older gentleman from Venezuela. He came into work today, the most distraught I've ever seen him. He was telling everyone this is exactly what they did, exactly when overthrowing Venezuela. It's no secret that you can rig an election. It's no secret that you can cheat. It happens all over the world, all the time, and the United States media talks about it all the time. In fact, sometimes they use it as justification to go into that country, invade, and try to take control over the leader. But people really think that you can't cheat and rig an election? Do you not realize that the people who are telling you that are probably guilty? Meanwhile, the same people telling you that it couldn't possibly happen are telling you it already did happen. The Washington Post said months ago mail-in ballots were part of a plot to deny Lincoln re-election in 1864. Obviously, it can happen. And I studied Syria and Libya, that are two countries that the United States invaded under the Hillary Clinton-Barack Obama era. And when I talk to people from Syria, it's very similar to what they're doing this year. There were protests, and they turned the protests into riots, and then they used those riots as justification. This year, you had protests turned to riots. And I watched what the media did. In many ways, they inspired them, they incited it, they basically organized it and told people to go out. Then many justified it and said it's okay to burn down buildings and loot because insurance will pay for it. But then they simultaneously said it didn't happen. It's not happening, it's a conspiracy theory, but it is happening. The destruction is actually right-wing terrorists, but actually it's mostly peaceful protests, so it's peaceful. They told people 5 different stories, and I guess people hate the president of the United States so much, they're willing to lie, cheat, steal, and do anything to achieve power. And I'm reading books like Color Communism, Common Sense by Manning Johnson. I read the Communist Manifesto. I've talked to people all over the world. This entire year, from shutting off the economy, from treating human beings like prisoners, from restricting the First Amendment and censoring social media online, to not allowing protests against the lockdown, but seemingly being okay with a violent non-protest terrorist event when it goes the other way politically, this is the wet dream of any foreign enemy or domestic enemy of America. Instagram only allows 15-minute videos, so you gotta watch this on my YouTube or Facebook channel to see the whole video. Check it out there.
Point, and I yield to Mr. Nadler.
Thank you. It's a very tempting point. I just, as a very experienced practical politician from New York, I feel constrained to observe that in my experience in New York, paper ballots are extremely susceptible to fraud. And at least with the old clunky voting machines that we have in New York, the deliberate fraud is way down compared to paper. When the machines break down and they vote on paper, we've had real problems. So there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. I'm simply observing that as a problem. There's got to be a way of getting the best of our methodologies.
But in fact, the MIT studies have shown that hand-counted paper ballots are among the most reliable. And at least if there's a miscount, you can discover it. You can't discover miscounts with these
then
machines.
Maybe optical scan with paper. I want a paper trail. I want paper somewhere, but pure paper with no machines. I can show you experience which would make your head spin.
And we thank you for
organization. Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Secondly, we're in a situation where
half these niggas is retarded, half these people is retarded, because you would have to be a retard not to see this shit at this point in time. I don't have to know you. If I can spend 10 minutes with you and say, oh, this person full of shit. It just takes me 10 minutes. I don't understand how y'all spent 47 years with this man and didn't realize he was full of shit. I'm not understanding that. But let's keep it pushing though, right? Because not only did Joe Biden say if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Joe Biden gave the eulogy at Robert Byrd funeral. Now you may remember Robert Byrd from the KKK, but you also may remember him not just as a grand wizard of the KKK, seen holding Joe Biden's hand right here. You may remember him when I showed him kissing Clinton on the cheek in the other photo. And so with that being said, not only is this man unintelligent, not only is he treasonous, he's a blatant racist, okay? Now, I want to remind y'all, this is Robert Byrd, however you say his name, I'm calling him Byrd. This is an ex-grand wizard of the KKK. And the reason I say ex is because he's dead now. And Joe Biden, okay, as you can see here, gave the eulogy at the man's funeral and called him a friend and a mentor. So I want to know why a known racist, okay, who according to his mouth was friends and mentored by the Grand Wizard of the KKK, was allowed to write the 1994 crime bill. Why? Why? And this also plays into more evidence that the Democratic Party not only started the Ku Klux Klan, but they still to this day utilize the Ku Klux Klan for their political agenda. Let's be clear on that. Now let's play the video.
As also noted, Robert C. Byrd was a parliamentary library, a keeper of the institution of the Senate, and he was the institution itself. But to me, and many people here today, like guys I see, Bill Bradley and Jim Sasser, who long left the Senate for greener pastures, and I hope better remuneration. We used to kid about that too, but for a lot of us, he was a friend, he was a mentor, and he was a guide.
You heard that? He was a friend, he was a mentor, and he was a guide. I want to show y'all who he's saying this about. He was a friend, he was a mentor, and he was a guide. Where the fuck is the Grand Wizard of the KKK gonna guide you? Where is he gonna guide you? Where is he gonna mentor you? I'm not understanding that. If you a politician and you're supposed to be about peace, how is somebody who literally is branded upon hate gonna mentor you? He wasn't even able to mentor his own dusty, crusty, Rice Krispie looking ass self. So how the fuck did he mentor you? How did he mentor you? Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Hold up. Now this is from the first Joe Biden versus Trump debate. Okay? This is from the first Joe Biden versus Trump debate. And I just want y'all to see that Joe Biden was in fact wearing a wire. And I don't want to hear nothing about they had to wear wires because the microphone was on the podium. There was no reason in the galaxy for this man to be wearing a wire other than the fact he was illegally and criminally communicating with an outside entity during the Donald Trump debate number 1. Let's play the tape.
There it is.
See the wire?
There it is.
Look at the wire.
Mike's wearing a wire. Why do you need a wire, bro? You got a mic.
Now here's the question. Here's the thing as I run that back. Okay? Who are you talking to, Joe?
There it is.
Who are you talking to?
There it is.
Look at that wire. Now here's the question. Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Are you talking to China? Are you talking to China? Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to during the presidential debate? Are you talking to China? That's what I don't even think he's talking to an American. I think he's talking to China. That's what I think. But let's keep it pushing. See, now we finna get hot. Now it's finna get spicy. Now that I've given you a quick microwave history lesson on Joe Biden, now it's time to get spicy. Okay? Hillary and Obama administration started the Russia hoax. Now, why is this important? Because Joe Biden was the vice president at the time and he was in on this Russia hoax. Now, I literally have this book. Literally. I can literally turn this light on, reach behind me on this bookshelf, and show you this book. I have this book. Get this book. But if you don't want to get this book, and you just want a quick understanding of what this book is about, pull up this article. Yahoo News, National Review. DNI releases CIA documents on Clinton's plan to tie Trump campaign to Russia. October 6, 2020. So this article just came out maybe a week and a half ago. It says former CIA director John Brennan briefed former President Obama on Hillary Clinton's plan to tie Trump campaign to Russia as a means of distracting the public from her private email server scandal before the 2016 election, according to newly declassified documents. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe on Tuesday declassified Brennan's handwritten notes along with the CIA memo showing that officials referred the alleged scheme to the FBI for potential investigation. So this right here is proof that they not only set General Flynn up and they set Trump up, but that Hillary Clinton, Obama, Joe Biden, and the corrupt FBI were all in on it to protect Hillary Clinton's email scandals. Because if you remember, she had 2 email scandals going on around this time. She had her email scandals with the nuclear codes on the public server laptop, and then it was the Anthony Weiner joint. So all of these, every motherfucking politician with a laptop need to be investigated. They need to start doing politicians the way they do niggas with a hoodie on. When the police see a nigga with a hoodie, they just jump out the car and frisk a motherfucker. So we need to take that same energy to these politicians when we see them pull a laptop out. If you see Hillary Clinton.
Why do you believe what you believe? Because at some point in your life, you trusted the information that somebody was giving you. And that someone you trusted told you that a car was a car, a tree was a tree, a bird was a bird, the blue stuff above you is the sky. And that's the way that we began to determine what we believe to be a fact. Most of the things that we believe to be a fact in our lives are told to us through our stories or the news that we hear. So my question would be, if they were deceiving you with the stories they tell you, would you be able to recognize that?
This media that we're consuming at such a rapid rate, we need to slow down and think about what we're consuming.
Bullshit going on.
What if the people in charge didn't have our best interests in mind? Now we have to ask ourselves, who's influencing our content?
Is the CIA involved in Hollywood?
Yes.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time, and I'm really excited to introduce my guests, Brad Martin and Liz Crokin, who are combined producers along with 2 other people of Out of Shadows. You've heard about this, and I watched the documentary, and I have to say this is the first time I was able to get my husband interested in what's going on. I mean, he's always been interested, but he's out hunting and he's out doing things. And a lot of times people are just busy with their own lives and they don't know what they don't know. So I want to thank you guys so much for bringing this all to light. I wanted to start out before I turn this all over to you, because I have so many questions for you. But one thing that I really love is that you start out on your website with a quote from Ephesians 6:10 and 20, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. And isn't that the truth right now?
Yeah, we're in a spiritual battle, and you know, we're all people of faith over here, and the topics that we cover are very dark, and it addresses, you know, rituals that are done and trafficking that involves children done by people who literally worship Satan. So it's been very important that we have stood firm in faith, and we've prayed over this project a lot, and that is how we're able to do this work, is because God has his hand on us and on this project. And so it's been very important for us to keep God at the forefront of this project and to give him all the credit for all the amazing exposure it's getting right now.
How did you guys get together, Brad? Was it, you started out in the documentary mostly. How did you all 3 or 4 of you get together?
Well, Mike kind of explains it in the doc, but Mike and I had awakened on our own in separate paths, and we came together. At that point that we had came together, he had already been talking about doing a documentary, and I think at that point already had spoken with Liz. And so they were already, and then soon after that, I think soon after that, they brought us together and we met. And then I did my interview about a year ago there. But that's how I came in to the project when it was already a little bit underway.
Yeah, and Brad and Mike had known each other for years because they were in the same business and they were obviously both stunt doubles. But I connected with them through social media because they were following the work that I was doing, and they were anons on Twitter before I got kicked off of Twitter. And so that's how I connected with them, and that's how I connect with a lot of like-minded people.
So for those who don't know what we're talking about, how can you describe your documentary briefly?
I mean, Out of Shadows for me is a way to explain to the world the propaganda machine of the entertainment business and how there is an entity out there, a dark entity that is trying to control the consciousness of the masses. And we just want, regardless of whether they believe us or not, the purpose of this is to bring attention to that. This is supposed to be a mellow red pill to kind of get into the psyche of the people that we couldn't quite reach. Because the more aggressive you are, the more shut off people are to receiving that information. From the reception that we've had on the internet, I feel that we hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, this is exactly what you want to have happen when you put a project out there, especially a documentary film, is that people watch it. So thank you guys for taking that chance, for being bold and brave. Has there been any backlash? Like when I went to the White House and I had dinner with the president, I posted a photo and I got death threats. Have you received anything like that?
Well, I've been doing this work since 2016, and so I'm used to getting backlash, and I got a lot of backlash back in 2016 and 2017 for covering Pizzagate and the child sex trafficking, but that nobody was really covering it back then. So I have gotten a little backlash since the documentary has come out, but the accusations that have come out against me are just ridiculous. People posting photos of me from parties in Hollywood, and it's like, hello, in the documentary, I say that I was a journalist who worked in Hollywood. And so obviously, yes, there's going to be pictures of me at parties in Hollywood because that's what I was paid to do. And we talked about that in the doc. We addressed that. And because of my background in Hollywood and media, that's what I think makes me a more reliable source to cover these topics, because I was in those circles. I met a lot of these people that we talk about in the documentary, and Brad has a background in Hollywood as well. But for me, I really haven't gotten much criticism at all, which is amazing. I'd say that 95% of the comments that I'm seeing on social media about the doc and myself are positive.
Good.
And also, just the other thing too, we were talking, Liz and I, we all have this little group chat going too, last night, and somebody was rousting us, and Liz or somebody said, just let the Anons do the work. And so I took a tweet actually from somebody that was rousting us, and I retweeted it. I said, anybody want to help me out here? And it was exactly that. They just got burned. It was awesome.
Yeah, and then that person ended up blocking their account.
Right.
We don't have a problem with people, debating us or giving us constructive criticism, or we don't have a problem with people disliking us or disliking the doc. It's what I'm concerned about is the slander. When people come out and they spread flat out lies about us or the documentary, that's the stuff that I will not tolerate. And that's when I get my lawyer involved. But people don't have to agree with.
What is Hollywood like? It was filled with all of these rules that were never written down anywhere, but everyone knew the rules. And everyone passed these rules on to you. Female agents, were big in my life, and they had definitely a hand in telling me the rules that I had to abide by, such as, you know, you have to have long hair, so the men in Hollywood would want to have sex with you. If they don't want to have sex with you, they're not going to cast you. And they said it in more aggressive terms. And I guess I figured they knew, and I didn't want to be homeless again, so I grew out my hair. And that kind of led to the start of this external life. It was like my internal and my external self were so wildly divergent, but stuck together. And it was almost like doing deep undercover work as a famous woman. It was really weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I always knew it wasn't going to be the big deal in my life.
It wasn't going to be the big deal. So you're always kind of playing a part as a person that plays a part.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And you're now getting kind of really deep into this, well, you've called it a patriarchy in LA. And I was wondering if you could talk a little more about that, because you talk about it in the book, and you have a great stat about the Directors Guild. But it's not just about men that keep this in place.
No, it's women too. It's not, you know, the patriarchy takes all of us. It's not like, oh, there's 49% of the population men and they're ruling everything and we're just here like, no, women actively support this power structure. And they actively support a power structure that doesn't support them, which is by definition a cult. And Hollywood, it's almost like biblical. It goes back to like the wizened old man like on his throne, like going like this. And whenever these kind of edicts are handed down, oh, you have to do this or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Oh, you have to do this magazine cover where you're wearing nothing but an ammo belt, or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Studio will be really unhappy with you. And that's like the God voice talking to you. And you can really substitute one for the other. It's rather chilling, I think.
And it's like 96% of the Directors Guild are men.
Yeah, 96% in the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, are men, and that statistic hasn't changed since 1946. So it's just a really narrow view, and it's primarily white male, and that's just doesn't reflect what I see on the streets. And there's nothing wrong with white men, but we don't only want to have their viewpoint.
Senator Moynihan proposed a bill to dismantle the CIA.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Introduced it twice. The second time was 1995. Ironically, 1 year later in 1996, the CIA established the Entertainment Liaison Office, which was specifically penetrated into Hollywood, and Chase Brandon was actually co-wrote scripts. For example, The Recruit.
We're looking for high horsepower, high energy, very competitive people who are driven by patriotism and a sense of wanting to serve a greater cause.
I am recruiting you. Would I have to kill anyone? Would you like to?
So the CIA was and is in Hollywood, was and is contributing to Hollywood productions and that manipulation.
The Recruit.
Nothing is what it seems. I never actually considered that the CIA had an office in Hollywood. And I'm like, well, I see this, I see that. And I started putting feelers out, like, does anybody else see this stuff? And not many people were awake. But the one person that I reached out to was an old colleague of mine, a friend of mine named Brad Martin. And Brad and I had similar careers. We worked our way up through the business together. And I'm like, hey, Brad, you've seen this, you've seen that? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And so that gave me strength. That gave me like, okay, well, I'm not alone in this deal. And I'm gonna keep looking.
Let me just say this. Brad's one of the greatest stuntmen I've ever met. Probably the best.
I'm a very physically creative person. I've been doing action for movies for 26, 27 years. I excelled at the action aspect of it, at the physical aspect of doing the fights and doing the gymnastics and doing the falls and doing the driving. I trained really hard and became one of the top stuntmen in the business. I started becoming a fight coordinator, and then a stunt coordinator, and then an action director. Very few people have ever gotten to where I've gotten to, and I'm super proud of what I did. I mean, I had a very idealistic view of the movie business, and I've been disillusioned a few times. It feels very much like there's an agenda in every movie. I realized that it was more of a machine, and it was more of they just needed content to put out there for the masses. I stopped really watching TV. I stopped really watching movies. And one of the reasons why I stopped watching movies is I got into my research and what's going on in the world right now, and all the corruptness and all of the plot twists of reality. And I started realizing that reality is 20 times more interesting than Hollywood. I mean, I was a Hollywood buff. I loved all of those movies, but now they're
something too about energy, and you gave a really good visual. For people like me, that's really helpful to be able to kind of wrap my brain around how to focus and channel the energy correctly, and where, and you talked about different parts of the brain and how that, sort of lights up that area. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so my guru had a beautiful saying, and it said, where awareness goes, energy flows. So in a simple analogy, I always tell people to look at awareness as a glowing ball of light. So imagine your mind as a vast space, and your awareness is a glowing ball of light that's floating through the mind, and you can control where it goes. And there's different areas of the mind. There's an angry area of the mind. There's a healthy area of the mind. There's a science and sex and food and photography. And if your awareness is going to a particular area of the mind, that's where energy is flowing, because where awareness goes, energy flows. And energy is like water. If whatever I water will start to grow, right? So if I took a watering can and I watered a garden bed, would the weeds grow or the flowers grow? Both, right? Because water can't tell the difference. Energy works the same way. If I put energy to a particular area of my mind, it will start to grow. So if I want to develop a particular area of the mind, all I need to do is harness my awareness, take it to that area of the mind, and hold it there long enough so there's enough energy going to that area, and that area starts to get strengthened. Have you ever met somebody who can get angry so easily?
Yeah.
Like just like that.
Absolutely.
And they like go into a rage, because their awareness is trained to go to the angry area of the mind all the time. And every time awareness goes from here to there, back and forth, it creates a path in their mind, right? Like a long, deep groove that it's so easy for them to go there. And every time awareness goes to the angry area of the mind, where awareness goes, energy flows, it's depositing a little bit of energy there. So after a while, that angry area of the mind is so filled with energy, and energy is magnetic by nature, and that's what starts to draw your awareness there. And it becomes, that angry area of the mind becomes like a giant magnet that can so easily pull awareness to that area of the mind. And that's why those people can get so triggered all the time. And different people cultivate different areas of the mind. Some people are happy. They're always happy. They're always an optimist, because that's where their awareness is going. And because awareness goes there, energy flows there, more energy is deposited there. More energy deposited there means more magnetic, which means it pulls awareness there much easier.
It's interesting because we describe bad movement patterns like this. So it's very common when you have really bad posture because you sit at the desk all day long, that you start to get what we call poor recruitment patterns, where neurologically the body starts to form and shape itself in a bad position. And then you go to do exercise, and just because you're doing a good exercise, like let's say a squat, the body still defaults to the pattern.
It's almost hardwired at that point.
Yeah.
And you have to retrain the brain first before you can even perform exercises correctly. So it seems to me like, why would it be any different for the brain, right?
Mind works exactly the same way. Anything that the mind basically has no ability to tell what's good for you and what's not good for you. If the mind actually knew, we'd all be perfect. I'd wake up in the morning, my mind would tell me, meditate for an hour, do yoga, run, work out, eat this breakfast, then sit down for 2 hours or 1 hour, then stretch, then do this. No, my mind just is like, do whatever the hell you want to do. Right? You like fries? Go ahead and eat it. Have another beer. The mind doesn't know, right? So whatever we tell our mind, whatever we repeat over and over in our mind creates patterns. And these patterns, when they're repeated, whether they're repeated consciously or unconsciously, become deeply ingrained and become extremely difficult to break.
Yeah,
right?
and studies will show that you will create new pathways in the brain, and the more you use them, the stronger they become.
Yeah.
And when you stop using them, they start to dissipate. So I mean, this has all been proven now, and these are old teachings, but these have all been proven now through physiology.
Right, and that's why in monk school, it's all about rituals. Right, it's all about rituals. From the moment we wake up till the moment we go to sleep, it's ritual, and you can tell in a very traditional monastery like the one I went to, from what the monk is doing, what time of the day it is.
Mm.
Where will you be in your business, in your life in 36 months? Not because you hope, because you decide. Everyone in this room knows how to create. You're not a manager of your life, you're a creator of your life, or you wouldn't be in this room. How do you create your life? You get hungry for something, don't you? Who has done something in your life that once seemed difficult or impossible, and now it's part of your life? Who's got something in your life in this area? Say I. How did you do it? You created it 3 ways. Number 1, you decided there's something you wanted so bad that you unleashed all your desire. You became obsessed with it. If it was a business or a car or a relationship or a transformation in your body, if there's something you once envisioned and now it's real, it's because you didn't just envision it, you brought so much emotion to it that now it's in your life. It was once a dream, it was once a goal, and now it's in your life. How many have something like that in your life now? Say I. You may take it for granted now, hopefully not, but it was once just a vision. It may have seemed impossible at one time. So how did you do it? You started with a concrete vision of what you wanted, and you focused on it continuously, didn't you? Wherever focus goes, energy flows. You envisioned something, you got clear about it, and then you started thinking about all the reasons why you wanted it. You got excited about it. Said, this is what's next for me now. I want this. You may have dreamed about it, thought about it, talked about it. But when you focus on something continuously, something magical happens. You get insights, don't you? You overhear a conversation and you hear something you wouldn't have heard if you didn't have that outcome or goal that you wanted so badly. Who's ever come up with something, obsessed about it, didn't even know how to do it, and it just happened and it came together? Who's had that experience? Say I. So why don't we tap into that power now for your business and life?